Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I am very well. It has been a good week in the household. We're getting
You,
ready to celebrate and party, and then you and I are getting ready to celebrate and party.
that is true. You have a college
I
graduate,
I
which is
have a
so
college
exciting.
graduate, and I feel old. So yes, for all the class of 2025, congratulations. It's not been an easy road. You all had to deal with COVID at some point in your career, so I hope you really get to enjoy this graduation.
Yes, congratulations. And also, we will be celebrating our 400th show very soon.
That's a big deal. We had to deal with COVID in our careers as well.
That is correct. But we will be celebrating show 400 in July, mid July, and we would like to have you on to celebrate with us. We're going to do a call in show, but it's going to be kind of like a party. And you can come in and leave whenever you please, unless there are more people who want to come in than Riverside can handle, our editing software. We want to hear from you and chat with you and see what you think of the Olympics and the Paralympics and the state they are today and what you think is going to happen down the road. I see some predictions happening.
Well, I have already made a prediction for LA. I realized as I was listening back to the show. So that was a little disconcerting. I'm like, wow, that was bold. So yeah, I want to hear predictions. I want to hear questions you have for us because you know me, I'll say whatever. And anything that you'd like to see on the show, because we'll take those too.
Right. So look for more information coming down the pike in June, and we will have information at least on our Facebook group. We'll also post it around. Facebook group is Keep the Flame Alive podcast. So excited. Also excited about this week's guest.
We always
'Cause
love when a friend comes back, especially this friend.
That's right. We are welcoming back Dr. Kristin Keim, a sports psychologist who works with a lot of athletes at all levels, including Olympians. Alison talked with her about what mental health challenges elite athletes are facing these days, including talk about disordered eating and dealing with social media bullies. Unfortunately, I was not able to be on the interview, but I will say it's always great when Christian comes on because I got a free hour of therapy while it was more than because it takes longer to edit the interview. But
Well, we did talk for more than an hour, so
yeah,
and there was the I think we ended up talking for, like, an hour and a half because there was, pre-interview and post-interview.
oh,
So,
right, right,
yeah, I
right.
got bonus time with my therapist.
Right. So lie back on the couch and take a listen to Allison's conversation with Dr. Keim.
Dr. Kristin Keim, so nice to see you again, welcome
Nice
back.
to see you too.
So, the last time we spoke was 2020, was in the middle of
Oh my
COVID.
gosh.
I
I
know,
know.
so many the time goes quickly,
It does.
and obviously, world was very different 5 years
Mhm.
ago.
Mhm.
One of the things you talked about at the time was a lot of athletes being very concerned about their own health and kind of that not hypochondria because that clinicalizes it. Are you still seeing that come up with a lot of people?
It was interesting because you definitely had people that were very aware about wearing masks from the get-go. Were then there were some that I felt kind of had that I'm invincible lens. Like, I'm more worried about an injury or hurting myself than like I'm going to get sick per se. And I think a lot of it has to do with the culture of sports too. More often than not, I mean, it was interesting because, like, the first time I really ever had athletes think about masking was actually ended up being a political thing towards the negative, right? Was it when they traveled that one time overseas and wore masks? And so it's just, again, it's all about the timing of things and situations. I think now what I'm sensing is not that there's a resurgence. I think that some athletes still became more aware to wash their hands and sanitize. Obviously, maybe not wearing masks per se, but ever since for the last 4 or 5 years, they have been, again, not hypochondriac, but more aware when they travel, right? More aware not being around athletes that are sick. Like, kind of on a I'm not invincible healthy lens, right? Now, though, with the measles and all that, it is 100% my athletes are now back to wearing masks and stuff on flights. Now, it's weird because not as many people are wearing. No, maybe no one else is, but I don't think at this point in the stage they don't really mind that people might think that they're looking weird or whatever. It's sort of like I don't want to get sick, and I don't need to explain myself to you. Plus, it's a generational thing. I mean, these are usually younger athletes who are just sound like woke, whatever you want to call them, right? And they're just like, screw you. I'm doing what I'm going to do. I don't want to get sick. So I am 100% seeing that. Like, just more caution, not wearing masks at a grocery store per se, but definitely on my clients who maybe not flying in the US, but when they go on 5, 6+ hour international flights and stuff, when they're going to be trapped in a cubicle for a longer period of time with germs. So now I've had athletes who are beautiful human being, compassionate empathy when they have been sick and then wanting to protect themselves from their athlete, like from their teammates, have said, hey, Dr. Keim, do you think it'll be weird if I wear my mask? Like, I've been sick. I don't want my teammates to get it team camp. And I'm like, oh my God, I love you. You're amazing. And I think that's just that, again, we're forgetting that that's really why people are trying to wear. It's not you're trying not to get sick. You're trying to help others not get sick too. So it's not to the level of that, but I think with unfortunately what's going on and with other illnesses and COVID's still around, there definitely are athletes who, again, I think that resurgence of this idea I'm not invincible has lingered and might be kind of rising back up as a reminder.
So let's talk about the world we live in right now. And
Yeah.
a lot has changed even in the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So are you getting a lot of issues that you haven't seen before? Things with social media, things with cyberbullying, other new stuff that's coming to the table.
At the height of when we last talked, I was also going through my own physical challenges with my disease, and it actually ended up only getting worse. I mean, like, seriously worse till 2023. I had to take time off. Now, granted, the Olympics were around, and it was hard to be open. I didn't want to be like, well, I can't work with you, but I can work with my Olympians. But it was like that. I did continue to work with some clients who, I mean, I just felt like I could not work with them, so I had to cut back. And I mean, most of my clients were very understanding. I think a lot of them were also dealing with this idea that they knew I was sick and hurt, so they were or not, I was in pain. So I didn't want them to be like worried about me, but they were becoming worried about me. Like, are you sure? Like, I don't need to meet today if you're not feeling good, and I'm like, okay, this is not working. We could spend 20 hours talking about how I miraculously got better. I did. But I learned that I got better because I stopped working and I could just focus on myself, take a page out of my own book to my clients. So slowly since September, I've started engaging back. And again, like I said, I was still working with some of these people, Olympians and stuff. It's interesting because, like, I think some of them have always had things like whether it's women's sports or climate change or depression in athletes. I do feel like they're feeling like they can have more of a voice about this, which is like how we fight it. The irony of it, it's like with so much darkness, I think light, and I don't want to get all Star Warsy, but I truly believe that, like, you need both in the world, and that light will always win. Good will always win. Like, and that's how you fight authoritarianism or tyranny, is they don't want you to have hope. They want you to be fear. Fear and apathy is where democracy dies. And so we're having these talks. Some of these kids live like me in places where they don't feel like they can talk about this stuff. Family members, friends, yes, who have political different views or just are trying to be blind to it. Not that I want to be political, but if that's what they want to talk about, I'm here to have a lens and teaching them how to do it. So how can they be respectful to their company and their sponsors? And I think that's a new thing that a lot of them are dealing with. I want to have a voice, but how can I have a voice and I represent this establishment? I need to respect that they're business and that, and they're not at a point where I feel like if it's me, what I would do, right? But I do think some of them are realizing maybe these are things that they don't want to be associated with anymore. So there's a lot of that going on. Like, I think just some hard life lessons and darkness that I don't think people realize were dark that they're a part of, and that they're really questioning, do I want to be a part of that? I feel like is really interesting, especially for early 20-year-olds. But like, one of my clients is really, really into climate change, and every day they're sending me text of whatever someone's closed in America, and it's causing stress and anxiety. And this was like an Olympian like level athlete, and they were always into climate change, but it was good. We had stuff we were doing. It could be better. Now it's like even the minimal that we have is now being, and they just feel like, I mean, they're already stressing about if they were to have children. I mean, like, like, and I don't think that their coaches or their team realize that this is the stuff they're losing sleep over. Not, are they going to win a race? It's like, and my children going to be able to have a planet to live on in 20 years kind of stuff. It's
So the
pretty, again, that's not the stuff you see in the news. But this is what people are stressed and worried about. It is a reality. It's not fake news.
so you're hearing your athletes not focusing on athletics anymore.
Oh, 100%. I'm glad that the races have started up, right? Like, oh my God, thank God races are back. But even then, between the races, it has nothing to do with, I mean, the racing to some degree is the cathartic escapism, which is why a lot of athletes get into racing, right? Like, that's why most have depression or anxiety, because it is something, that is a coping mechanism. And that's all I try to, and I think they, again, I'm so blessed to work with such amazing human beings, and they're starting to feel, it's kind of like what happened during COVID, like, but during COVID, they couldn't compete. They didn't race. So it kind of made them feel like, okay, well, I can't do what I love. I'm in solidarity with everyone else. Well, now they're going off and racing and traveling, and my Americans are just traveling to other countries and not worried that they might end up in a prison or something. And this is a reality. And they're sitting there with all their, like, most of their teammates are from other countries, and they just, some of them are American champions, and they are embarrassed to wear their national champion kits in other countries right now. Like, this is happening right now. I'm not trying to be a ranting liberal lunatic. This is reality. Like, my kids are embarrassed to be known as an American. I can't even imagine I'm living in a world where this ever happened. Like, I have worked with Olympians, and I have gone to the Olympics. I have never been more, I mean, yeah, we can always change in every country, but I've never been ashamed of my country. I mean, I should to some degree, our history, but like I said, this is like a whole new thing where athletes are afraid and embarrassed for their teammates, for other athletes, and they're afraid and embarrassed to even wear things associated to America in international races.
Obviously, a very different issue than performance anxiety.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I would love it to be performance anxiety. Well, and the sad thing is that these are human beings. So when they get stressed, whether it's not doing well in a race or destruction of Mother Nature, it will trigger whatever they do have. So if they have a history of depression, if they have a history of eating disorders, if they have a history of generalized anxiety disorder, then that stuff gets exasperated, and then that triggers them.
I'm so glad you said that, because we talk so much about how a situation causes a particular mental challenge. And it's almost like a body injury where if your knee is weak, if you start running, your knee's going to hurt. So, what you just said is so important. The idea that if you have a history of depression or an eating disorder, it doesn't have to be about food to then
Oh, it
trigger
never
the eating
is. I mean,
disorder.
yeah, it's a body image mainly, especially for most athletes, regardless whether it's basketball, softball, or soccer or cycling. Eating disorders is about control. Yes, it's about body image and all that. But I do think with this generation, I think earlier on when I worked and studied eating disorders, it was a lot about food. And we had this whole like really increase in bulimia and like the starving practices. Now with social media, it's really about body image. But in a way, I think that opens up a door for proper nutrition to work on that, get in the bubble, get off social media. These things usually tame down than this really destructive obsessiveness about the food. I mean, there's still that, but it is mainly more about the body image. But if they are clinically, I mean, there's a difference. I would say most athletes across sports, and I say this with, there's research, I don't know the exact number, so I say this as like a overarching statement, not a fact, but an opinion with some science to back it, evidence-based. There's a difference between an eating disorder clinical diagnosis that I would give, a therapist would give, psychiatrist, not just your doctor. It needs to be someone who's done testing, like actual testing, check the boxes. But I would say about 90% of athletes have disordered eating, not an eating disorder, right? So that's the thing. It's like, so if you have an eating disorder, it never goes away. I mean, you do tend to outgrow it, but like if you had a really horrific, stressful thing hit you, that it will come back up. And so the same with depression. If you have a diagnosis of a depressive disorder where you might be on medication, it will get better. But the reason why we diagnose you is so that as preventative measures. So when you are stressed, you need to be aware of the symptoms that you might be falling back into a depressive episode so that you can either avoid it or have your tools in your toolbox to make it less of a episode, basically.
Are you approaching these athletes different than you did 10 years ago?
Oh,
In what
100%.
Okay, so how are you advising them and
Definitely.
and giving them different tools are you doing and different approaches?
I think the biggest thing would be a lot of, like, I understand all my micro macroaggressions and I understand my privilege too. I think there was a point where I would teach athletes that, especially women, you need to be embracing this identity. We don't need to have that you were a teacher, that you were a student. You need to be, I don't want to say singular focus. Like, it's okay to have other interests, but it's okay also to just really own this athletic identity. And not that I'm saying that's bad, but I think my lens now is really more about pushing people to have a variety of identities, that you need to be, instead of black and white, be a facade of beautiful colors, be colorful. And I think the problem is that cultures and sports really want you to be one thing in a box. I don't think I was perpetuating that. And I understand at the time, because this is a very different time 10 years ago, and I think for the athletes that I was working with, they were the ones that really struggle with even owning their athletic identity. We still got a ways to go, but it's definitely better. I mean, 100% better. Again, I don't want to settle for where it's at by any means, but it is definitely better. Has not gotten worse since 10 years ago. I will say that. Maybe not to the level I would love it to be, but we've had massive advancements. And just the way that how many millions and millions of people just watch the championship, NCAA championship. Hell no, that was not happening 10 years ago, right? But most people didn't even probably know who Dawn Staley was 10 years ago, right? And women's cycling, like now every Sunday and Saturday on Max, HBO Max, I can watch pro mountain bike races. That was not happening 10 years ago. So that's what I'm saying we've gotten better at, where I really had to push women to own their athletic identity because they didn't own it. And even some guys, like I had some 23-year-old dudes that were just like, I don't know if I'm good enough. And I'm like, yes, you are, right? Like, you've got to own your worth. I don't see that. I think these kids are, and it's a generational thing. I think these kids coming out are like, hell yeah, this is who I am. But I think that they struggle with having, because of the internet, I struggled with this, and this is where I can come in too. I've never seen myself reach the highest level of one thing because I've always had, I don't want to say distractions, but so many talents, right? It's the plague of talents, what I kind of say. And I intend to work with a lot of people who are very talented human beings. And I think that that's their secret weapon to do greatness. You don't need to be perfect and great in one thing to have a meaningful life. That has changed. That message has changed. But I think it's more not as less me. It's me adapting to the times. And I would say that I'm most proud of that as a therapist, is that I'm taking the tools I learned 15, 20 years ago, but I read journals, I stay in tune. but I just listen and I adapt my message and my hearing and my history, personally and professionally, with the sign of the times and where it's going. And I mean, I'm not a parent, but literally I could be the parent to some of these clients. And I think that that's why I'm not a parent. It's like I have 20 kids right now, right? And so I'm very blessed in that way.
It's like the Dolly Parton of athletic
It really
psychology.
is. And I think that's a good, I mean, and it's amazing because when I work with kids who are 18 under, I always 100% have like monthly check ins with parents. It is interesting to talk to parents who are literally my age, and I need to be confident in that. It's like, just because I don't have my own kids, actually, I think that's good because then I don't have biased lens on how I would parent because I'm not a parent. So this is what I'm seeing from my clinical expert of taking tons of classes on this, but also just working with tons of parents and kids over periods of, 15 years. So,
And let's talk about the elephant in the room, social media, and how that's playing into what your athletes are bringing to the table.
oof, well, I personally can't even go on Instagram right now. Like, and the only reason why I engage usually is to follow my sister or my clients. I don't even know what to say because if I'm very honest on here, and I always want to be who I am. So if anyone listens to this and they don't want to work with me because of it, I can't see people just taking pictures of their foods while our democracy is about to be imploded or being taken over by an oligarch or authoritarianism. I mean, I can't. Now, if you can, more power to you. I'm not saying that's bad. I personally, as long as I have my own freedom right now, I cannot do that. I go on and I'm just like, I can't do this. I can't do it.
Have any of your kids talked about cyberbullying?
So I definitely dealt with it a lot in the previous years with high profile clients where I'm just, my lens is this, and I kind of feel the same with actors. And I think it's funny when they're like, oh, I don't want all the media. And I'm like, this is what you signed up for. That doesn't say that people should paparazzi and should be mean people on the internet, right? This is what I have to remind myself. I'm like, y'all think it's all about winning. It's not. You would not have a team. Your sport is indicative of fans. And so if you're going into this territory, if you're going to share your journey, you're going to have mean people who are usually just empty, hollow, really sad human beings who have no life, basically. And I feel sorry for them. I really do. It's like when people used to flip me off when I was riding my bike and my friends would flip them off. And I would be like, I just really feel sorry for them. And they're like, what? I'm like, what really went on in their life where they really felt like a group of human beings riding on a beautiful sunny day are worth running off the road and flicking off when literally we were in a bike lane, right? Like, that's so sad. And so that's why I try to have this human contact with them. It's like, I know you hear this, but it really has nothing to do with you. They're projecting their stuff onto you. That doesn't mean you have to like it, but you're only giving them power when you read it and digest it. They're winning if you get upset by it. So we have some really hard talks about that. And some of them, they're just now getting that. Like, they're just now being seen as real professionals and they're posting stuff and people are starting to say, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be riding your bike more. And, it's like what happened with the South Carolina girls. They had some rapper that's really big fans of them and they weren't playing well and they do a lot of TikToks and they're like, y'all need to get off TikTok. And the girls came back and said, we play basketball 10 hours a day. Like, if we were to sit there and do nothing but basketball, we would all be depressed and literally we would not be at national championships. Like, we're also 18-year-old girls who love to dance and have fun, and we love playing, and we play because it's fun. And it's like, who are you to dictate? I've never seen you at a women's national championship game, right? But I was so proud. Again, these kids, no one would ever have done that 10 years ago to someone like that. These girls, these kids are like, you ain't going to tell me to go off TikTok, right? But I do know, even though they're standing up for it, I'm sure they are questioning, should I be on TikTok? Or what do other people think? Like, they're human beings. So now that is in the back of their mind when they go on TikTok. Even if they're going to be like showing up and still enjoying it, it's already tainted something that they really was pleasurable, you know? So, I mean, that's the conversation that a lot of my clients are having, where they're just now starting to understand that, like, they have fans, but more importantly, they have a platform. That is something that I do push. It's like, if you are really passionate about depression, share your story. If you're really passionate about your eating disorder, share your story. I'm not saying you have to, but I definitely empower them to share their story.
Does that advice change age-wise? Like if you're talking to an 18-year-old versus a 28-year-old?
Oh, definitely. I think, oh, well, I never even have an 18-year-old probably say that. And it's people I've worked with for a long time, and then they decide, like, they're healthy and on the other side of the journey. I would never say share it when you're in the middle of crisis. No, 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 no. Only share your story of conflict, not while you're in the process of sickness, illness, or grieving. It's the same thing, right? Don't, it's not good. You aren't helping people unless, if you're trying to help yourself by writing this and sharing this. You're only sharing this because you want to help people. There's a difference.
So we spoke to Gracie Gold, who just, she wrote the memoir, obviously on the other side, but she had the issue of during her worst times, she was very much in the media. Often the worst moments of an athlete's life, the cameras are on them.
Yeah.
And if they fail when they should have won, or if they're struggling with mental health issues, like Simone Biles had to step back, all those things. And as you're saying, don't put yourself out there, but you're being put out there.
Right.
So what do you do with that? What do you advise them? And how can we as fans also, it's a multi-part question, do better?
Well, you named it. It's the education, and that's what I would do. Obviously, she had support around her. She had a really good village. That's what you lean into, but that's what you're never in control of. That's why I try to teach my clients, like, you cannot control others. People always try to taint or misconstrue the story, just like what we're saying. But that's why you have to have a succinct message. You just need to go out there, you tell your story to where you're comfortable, and that's all you can control. But that's what you sleep on. You sleep at night knowing that you're living your truth, and you have no control what other people are telling about. And you have to just stay, go into your bubble. And like with her, it would be about, yeah, like she doesn't have a control of that, but by her staying true to her story and then really trusting in the people that she trusts, look where she got. And that's really it. It's making things smaller, make your world smaller. That's always what I say when my clients start to have challenges with their eating disorder again or something like that. I'm like, okay, well then obviously your world's gotten too big. Something is just too much. So make your world, go back to your 1%, eating good food, hanging out with your friends, laughter. I have some clients who have some really cool interests, and there's a local lady in Columbia, South Carolina, who does like adult coloring books, and they're super cool because they have like quotes for runners, quote for cyclists, quotes for climate change. I mean, and they're beautiful drawings, like super cool. So I just used my little business discretionary funds and bought tons of them and shipped them out to all my clients. And and it really is the basics. Like, go make your world small, go color, make some art, or write your poetry, or do fun TikTok dances, right? Like, get back to things. Again, when you give power to people outside of your village, they win. But you and your village and the people that you really care about are the only people. You don't need to prove something to the world. You just prove something to yourself first, and to the people that truly love you, not because you're a really good skater or whatever, but they love you even if tomorrow you quit skating. They don't care. They love you as a human being, a flawed, unique human being.
We had the Summer Olympics. Now we've got a lot of athletes transitioning into retirement. Is retirement different now than even 10 years ago for athletes?
Yes, because they don't really retire. They don't, which I also think is its own challenge, especially for some endurance sports, because now they can stop maybe Olympic World Cup level, but now there's all this like gravel racing or endurance racing, or I mean, and there's really good like the Leadville 100. So they, I mean, these kids are making more money and have more sponsors than my athletes trying to go to the Olympics, and they were in retirement. So I'm very conflicted about this. But then you see the issue, especially if it's a client like that I used to work with, and then they retired and then they got back into it, and I just see from me following their social media that all those issues have come back up again. I don't think it's bad because I get it. You got to make money. But I mean, when you talk about the really bad part of an identity, it's like, wow, this is not good, because you do need to be able to move on. And that's what the problem is. It's like, you're a firefighter for your whole life. Yeah, but firefighters don't eat, sleep. I mean, it is different. I would say that's closer, a surgeon. There are some that are closer, but yeah, it's still different. And I just don't think it's healthy for the athlete, but more importantly, their family. I mean, they have different roles now, and I just see that bleeding over. Now, it's one thing if you've been a pro until you're 40, that's a little different. But when you have retired and then you get back into it, obviously there's something going on, that this person is struggling with something. They cannot let this go. And you see that a lot more as normalized.
Were there good moments you saw mental health wise in Paris, and not so good moments that you noticed?
I mean, Paris was interesting. I mean, it was so weird with the last Olympics because of COVID that I feel like that was still this lingering feel. I mean, London and Rio were just very different than Tokyo and Paris. And now I'm really scared about LA. And now the winter will be interesting to see how that changes. I felt like it was life or death to make it to London or to Rio. And then there's like so many layers to that. What was it, Tokyo?
Tokyo.
Right? Yeah, Tokyo. That's what I'm saying. It was sort of like, I didn't make it, but really, I don't really care. Kind of the same thing with Paris. Like they wanted to, but I don't feel like they were in it. Like they said, "Oh, I want to go to Paris," and I'm like, "Do you really? Like, do you really think you can, or are you really in the back of your head just aiming for LA 2028?" Right? I really sensed that, and so I don't know if that was just the sports that I work with, but I kind of felt like that was the energy of the world. It was sort of like Paris Olympics, but it really wasn't what I felt like it was. So again, I can't speak to swimming and tennis and soccer and all that, but I just felt that from the world, that it just didn't seem to have the passionate following and excitement that we usually, I mean, Summer Olympics, no matter where it is, but I just felt like it was something that you just always had on TV all day. And even winter, I'm not even like a big winter sports person. I mean, I still did it, but I didn't sense that from the news, from the social media. Just didn't sense that.
Are you working with any Paralympians?
Not currently, but I have in the past.
What's different in terms of sports
Honestly,
psych?
I feel like that's what I followed more in Paris. I love
But
that you
what's
brought that up.
I love
Totally started following and engaging. That and men's gymnastics is about the only two things I really focused on: men's gymnastics and Paralympians.
when you're dealing with sports psychology with Paralympians, is that significantly different? Obviously, there are many issues that are different, but when you're really in the nitty-gritty of performance anxiety and managing those things, is it still different?
Again, I'm really on the lens of you're a human being. And I really sense, especially from my own disability, having worked with disabled athletes and just human beings, I think it's owning that you're disabled, but in the day, it's kind of interesting lens I learned when I work with cancer patients, where yes, there's a school of thought that's like, I'm a warrior and I'm gonna beat cancer. And then there's a school of thought that I learned from clients who are like, I have cancer, but I'm not some pink warrior. Like, I am still a teacher, an author, a mom, a poet, and I have cancer. But I don't want to be this like, you see me and I'm this cancer. I sense that that's kind of what Paralympians are. They're athletes. That's what they want to be. Yes, they're Paralympians, but they're athletes and they're human beings, and that's how I treat them. Right now, they might come up with their own unique challenges because of their physical disabilities, or if they have autism, on the autistic spectrum or whatever. I mean, it's interesting because there is no perfect being. So they either have a history of their family having cancer or chronic illness, or they do have a severe injury, or they break something. I mean, so this able bodyism is very, I mean, I hope that that's something that, sometimes you have to face darkness. The only way to do it is to go through it. That is something we definitely, as Americans, has been a massive micro. I mean, yeah, we got sexism, we got racism, but let's talk about ableism. Holy crap! Like, that is something that has needed to be worked on. I've been preaching about that for 20 years. Like, it is horrible, and this idea that we have Special Olympics and Paralympics, it's like we're doing them a service. That is so toxic. I'd like to see some of these people able-bodied go and do some of the stuff that these human beings do. Holy crap! It's amazing. I've been to tryouts for the swimming Olympics, and I'm like, I couldn't do what those swimmers are doing with 2 arms, and they have like 1 leg. I'm like, what? This is amazing. I'm sorry, that's more impressive than Michael Phelps doing something with 2 arms and 2 legs. I mean, it's stuff like that. I'm just like, but at the end of the day, they don't want to be known for that. They want to be known because they have a talent, a skill, and they want their PR no different than Simone Biles wants to stick her landing. They do too, right? More like than different.
What's too young to be an Olympian
Woo!
psychologically?
Oh my God. It should be 18 and above. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm
because
sorry. I
I
mean, I'm sorry. Like, this 14-year-old, 16 stuff is just scary, toxic, emotional, physically. First off, the stuff that they're doing to their body, Americans and the whole world should be appalled, especially gymnasts, the torture they're doing to those girls' bodies, especially in regimes like in China and stuff. Like, that literally is, I mean, people have gone to prison for stuff. I mean, there's so many layers. I know you don't want to get probably into the transgender thing, but like, there's so much sexual, predatory, and emotional and physical abuse in sports towards girls and boys that no one talks about. I'm also worried about parents that would allow their kids to be at this level at 14. I work with 14-year-olds, and some of them are very gifted, like some skip grades, so they're running with older people and they're struggling. But I'm like, well, yeah, because you're 14 and you're running against 18-year-olds. I'm having to remind the parents, like, it's one thing to be in class with them, but they're physically more mature. This is that difference. And I just think that, yes, I'm all about the individual, and maybe that kid's really mature and they can do that. But I also think that that's when parents and educated adults need to be adults, and we need to have allow children to be children. And children aren't in the Olympics. The Olympics is something for excellence, and kids need to be kids, and they can be great at 18. I see no reason that anyone 14 years old should be having to have that level of stress put on them mentally, but also if they're that good at 14, that worries me to what they've been doing to their bodies to be at the level of a 25-year-old athlete also. That scares me.
what kind of psychological ramifications are happening to those kids?
Well, I mean, again, you don't have a childhood. They don't play, which could lead them to being victims because they learn to trust the wrong people because they are trustworthy. Children are, they're innocent, they're trustworthy. But then they don't have a breath of, it's almost a naiveness because they're not allowed to go outside, play with diversity. So they don't know when something's right or wrong, or if this is not right to do to my body. But also, if there's a history of anxiety, depression, you're only just creating a space for that to happen too. Like, it's only going to lead to a closer chance that this human being could have that. Because I'm sorry, there's no way that trying to get at the level of being Olympic. I mean, think about it. They're making the Olympic team. How much competition are they putting? Right? Like, that is stressful. Whether you're the best or not, think about all the flooding of cortisol levels that body is going through at those young ages. And that's why those are the kids. If you see these little kids like gymnasts that were really great, really young. I want to know what their mental health history looks like and their physical history. And we now know, again, I'm not going to say names, but most of them have all had histories of severe depression, eating disorder, chronic injuries. Hello, connect the dots. Causation, correlation, whatever.
We can do a whole show probably on eating disorders. But I do
Yeah.
want to spend a couple of minutes because you said something earlier about disordered eating versus eating disorder. So I just wanted you to explain that a little bit and how that kind of plays into what athletes are dealing with because they are so focused on their bodies.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I was a dancer and I was a cyclist, and I had a very different lens because of my chronic illness my whole life. I always struggled to keep weight on, which is a real reality. I always struggled with being too masculine, muscular looking when I, like, which again, people will be like, oh, I wish I had that problem. Like, no, you don't. It's still a problem. You know, it's my worldview, it's my lens, my body. So it's interesting to have that lens when I would say majority, it's not that, it's the opposite. I look too big, just that lens. But I also have to understand that when they are trying to make the Olympics and win World Cups, you do have to be a certain way and you do have to eat certain foods. Like, there's no way around it. Obviously, you can have good support, you can have nutritionists, you can have all that, and you still struggle with it. And I think it's just, it is what it is. You're going to struggle with it. So I'd rather you text me that, all right, you had a bad race, so I'll wait 1 or 2 days. Then all of a sudden, my client will be like, oh my God, I'm so fat. And so I kind of get, I'm like, yeah, you're triggered. I kind of was waiting that. But are they going to go off and binge eat and then throw up? Or are they going to withhold food? No, they're not. They just need to bleh it. You know, I sense that maybe that might be happening more, but if they don't get proper therapy or have someone safe to talk about these emotions, then it can turn to something more chronic. So those people have an eating disorder, but probably I'm not worried that they're even eating disorderly because they have had a severe disease. I know they're going to eat. Now, are they going to struggle and overanalyze that they had ice cream for dinner? Yes, but they did eat it. They did eat. They're not withholding. There's no sign physically that they're withholding. It's now way more just like that body image. I think that is more what I'm sensing. So I think there's why coaches and parents need to understand, and even research in eating disorder needs to expand upon that. Because what is disordered eating, right? And I don't even like the word disordered, but like, you're having to have a certain nutritional caloric input of calories for a sport. And most of the time, it's a lot of quality, a lot of certain sugars, a lot that could push you to being too healthy, right? So there's these different layers of, and I think it's what we need to do in sports context and the clinical context, just like we had to with bulimia. Like, you have to broaden definitions and new diagnoses. I think that that's something that's coming up more. It's like, okay, when does disordered eating maybe not become a clinical, the same as a clinical, but maybe there is something that needs to be more understood about how does the disorder then lead to something worse? And now it's not just, oh, they're just hypochondriac about what they eat. It's like, no, that's a red flag for something. And that usually starts off more about the food and performance. And that's why it's not a clinical. But then the clinical usually has nothing to do with the food or the image. I mean, that's usually more of an anxiety, depression manifesting through that control because they don't have control, right? But the disordered eating is usually a lot more of the performance based, but it could lead to something else. I don't know if that really helps the
No,
distinguishment.
absolutely. I know,
Okay.
like I said, we can do a whole show,
And again,
probably
this
a
is
whole
kind of
series.
my lens. I mean, like, I don't have the energy to sit there and write these complex articles on it. I'm sure I tweeted about it, 10 years ago. There's a difference between a clinical eating disorder and disordered eating. But Lord, now that is really paramount. I will never tell an athlete, just eat whatever you want to eat. Just go eat Snickers. Like, you can't do that to a professional athlete. That's not good for them either, right? But can you eat ice cream? Yes. But it's kind of moderation. So I try to tell them that. I'm like, do you feel good? Like, does it feel great to eat 10 donuts? No, you feel like a sugar bomb. You feel bad, not because you're going to gain weight. So that's what I try to teach them too. It's just like, here's the science about our emotions and our food. Like, you may crave this because you're starving, but really, are you just thirsty? Right. So it's just getting back to, that's why having really good sports science nutritionists, not maybe registered dietitians, there's a difference, to teach the science, because these kids are obsessed with numbers and they know all this stuff about their watts and data for their swimming, PRs, running. I mean, they know it all at 14. So just have someone have science. So if you tell them this is how many calories you need to eat to perform, and then they have a good race and they ate. Like, I had a guy one time and he kept having these panic attacks, and I was like, so tell me, like, take me through your race. Like, what's your nutrition plan? We hadn't even gotten there. He was a new athlete. Oh my God, he was under fueling, like, massively. And I was like, oh my God, you're bonking. That's what's causing this. So then he talked to my friend who's a sports nutritionist, and the guy was like, I don't even know how you even made it to this level. You have not been eating enough on the bike, off the bike. So it took a while. It took about 6 months. This kid, he like wins it. I don't even know the last time he's lost anything in his career since then. I mean, that was it. And now he still little, still very fit, but the kid eats like, I mean, he's a great role model because he eats like 17 million bars and gels on an hour ride now, right? Those are the people I want out there. Like, I teach those kids, I empower them. Show them what you eat on your training rides, because I will say this, eating disorders is actually getting way worse. It's having a resurgence. I'm seeing this like red light, green light stuff that athletes are doing where they don't eat for so long, and it's like a TikTok thing. Oh, it's bad. But we definitely have lots. I'm sorry. You know when someone is sick, and there's just too many athletes where I'm like, and I don't blame the athlete. These are kids. These are like U23 athletes. And I'm like, I blame coaches and parents. That is child abuse. They shouldn't be competing. They shouldn't be racing. And I'm pretty adamant about it. And then I get proof. Like, their teammates are like, yeah, they never eat. Never see them eating. And they're just letting them race. And yeah, they're winning. Well, we know that to a degree. You will do well. And then your body literally is eating itself, and you may cause damage to your organs for the rest of your life. So is it worth it winning a few races when you're 18? Yeah.
What can we as fans do better to protect our athletes' mental health?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think just be empathetic and sharing. I get it. And, again, don't put them on a pedestal. Just be like, yeah, when I was depressed, or I think it's really amazing that, you've inspired me, not only because you can do backflips, but I'm even more inspired. And that's what makes me feel really good about human beings, is that when athletes come out, maybe 20 years ago it was hard, but now it seems like, I mean, it's tragically, it does humanize them more. It makes them feel, kids are, people are like, especially like what that time when those NBA players started coming out on Tribune or whatever, Sport Tribune or whatever that site was, opening up about their depression and stuff. That, again, that's the platform. If you have a platform and you have gone through a miscarriage, I mean, just some hard life stuff, I'm not saying you need to share it, but the world would love to see that you can do great things, but no one's life is perfect. We all have our struggles, and in solidarity, we're going to support each other. And I feel like when an athlete is vulnerable, you as a human being, giving them and offering our athletes and these people they are amazing. What they do is amazing because, again, people always say, is it what comes first, chicken or the egg? I truly believe that you were born an Olympian. Like, I don't think there's people sitting on couches, like a couch potato would be an Olympian. I don't believe that. I think it's a very I think these are people that were born to do something, like they're wired that way, right? No matter nature, nurture. I mean, their parents could have been like, never done a sport in their life, never been. I mean, there's like this girl, that's what they said, like, number one recruit coming out of high school for basketball. She doesn't even look that athletic. And literally, her parents had nothing to do with sport. They're all academics. And they were like, yeah, she just picked up a ball one day and was like really good at it and like never put it down, right? She was born that way, right? Now there is a lot of complexities to it, but I do think at the end of the day, like, but with anything like that, there's a dark to it. And I think that that's what people have to realize. Like, it really is hard to be the best at something. Your world becomes very vanilla and very black and white, but that's the sacrifice you have to take to be greatness. And so, with that, will become a lot of internal challenges. And when someone is vulnerable enough to share their story, we need to be empathic and compassionate to just listen to them. They don't need your feedback. Just listen to them. And I think that's it. Just encouraging a safe environment for anyone to share their story, and again, less judgment and less giving advice. Just listen. You know, one of my favorite quotes was that, like, listening without a reply. So when you're listening to someone, are you already thinking of your reply to that? Because if you are, you're not really listening to them.
Dr. Kristin Keim, always great to see you again.
Me
Thanks so much for
too.
being with us.
Oh, this is great. Thank you for igniting my back to podcasts in, like, I don't know how many years.
Thank you so much, Kristen. You can find out more about Kristen's services at keimperformanceconsulting.com and follow her on Insta at the K2. That's the number 2. We will have links to all of that in the show notes.
Tu es coupable.
Speaking of cyberbullying, all 7 of the cyberbulliers who went after opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies director Thomas Joly were found guilty, and they will have to pay some pretty hefty fines and have suspended prison sentences. So, folks, does not pay to cyberbully.
It's just such a stupid thing to do because this wasn't just cyberbullying. They made death threats. Come on. Grow up.
Right, right. In happier news, almost time for the return of the cauldron. The Paris 2024 Cauldron will return to the Jardin des Tuileries every June 21st through September 14th until LA 2028. The Cauldron will be called Vasque Paris par les 24.
Oh, now you're getting fancy with the numbers.
Paris 2024. And it will have a white flame to differentiate it from the Olympic and Paralympic flames. And by flame, we mean light.
What color was it before? Was it orangey?
It was orangey. Okay. It was like a fire. It looked like a fire. So to mark the 2025 return, there will be a big concert on June 10th. So look out for that if you happen to be in Paris. There will be no reservations needed to visit the Cauldron, unlike there were for the games. And then there's also going to be a 1-year anniversary celebration at the end of July. So it will be very exciting to see the Cauldron back. It's a really funky cauldron. When you're talking about thinking outside of the box, they really thought outside of the box with the hot air balloon.
And it was, I'm sure everyone who is in Paris has this experience that we had where you would just see it. You'd be coming out of the metro and there it was up in the air in the evenings. And that was just such a distinct memory for those games. And that's what makes it so special.
Also on the docket for the summer, public swimming in the Seine. Yes, they made it happen. They made it happen. France24.com reports that the promise of swimming in the Seine is finally coming to fruition on July 5th, when there will be public swimming in 3 different spots, the Bras Marie in the historic center, the Grenelle district on the west side, and Bercy on the east side. So water quality will continue to be monitored, and of course, if it's not safe, there will be posts to let people know that they cannot swim that day. That's kind of like in a rain situation, and that happens up by me and the Great Lakes. So that's just so exciting that people will be able to swim in the sun again. I am curious to know how popular that's going to be. More legacy. Ellencourt Hill, which was the mountain bike venue, is now open to the public. The venue had been a sandstone quarry and a landfill. It was fenced off for decades, according to Olympics.com. The Games renovated the space for use during the Olympics. It's now a park with mountain bike trails, walking paths, a pump track, and picnic areas. So now we have another green space to use.
Yeah, and Paris definitely needed.
Yeah, they do.
Needed some more green space.
And speaking of green space, in Saint Saint Denis, Parc Georges Valbon has been expanded as a result of the games, taking over and cleaning up what was a contaminated military fuel depot and adding that land onto the park. And during the games, it was one of the fan zones that was around the city. So, some very nice news coming out of Paris.
We like green space
That's right.
and clean water. Non andremo a New York.
Very true. According to Lake Placid News, the town's Olympic Regional Development Authority announced that Plan B will not be activated. So Lake Placid will not be needed as a site for the Olympic Games because the sliding track situation is under control.
I was just thinking, like, Plan B will not be activated. Like, is there a button in IOC headquarters and they hit it and it's like buzzers go off at Lake Placid? Plan B activated! Plan B activated!
Sadly, we will not find out. But I'm curious, is the sliding novella really over?
No,
Okay, good.
absolutely not.
But that does mean good news for Milano-Cortina, which is already spread out. They didn't necessarily need it spread out even further.
And good news for the sliders that they'll get to be at least in Italy and have a shot at going to the ceremonies. Possibly.
The International Skating Union has published a list of athletes from Russia and Belarus who are now eligible to participate in ISU events for qualifying for Milano-Cortina in both figure skating and speed skating. List is small, but that does mean that there's potential for neutral athletes to compete at the games. Again, individual, because Reuters reports that Russian teams will still be banned from the games, so do not look for Russian teams in hockey.
And also in team figure skating and team speed skating.
Right. And
So
curling, but
and
I
curling. So
don't
even
think
though those individual athletes may participate, none of those team events will be allowed for them.
and Milan's getting closer because
Sure, I
I
know.
know we have a lot of work to do, but NBC has already been filming promo shots. And who have we spotted with the tiny mic? Erin Jackson.
Looking so sharp in her promos, as you expect.
We have a lot of news from LA. And of course, we take 2 weeks of non-typical episodes. And what does LA do?
It
Right at the beginning.
explodes.
Yes, right at the beginning of that period, it exploded. First off, we now know where the opening and closing ceremonies will take place for LA 2028. The opening ceremony for the Olympics will be split. For the first time, we're having 2 stadiums for an Olympic opening ceremony. It will be split between the LA Memorial Coliseum, which was the opening ceremony stadium, well, actually the ceremony stadium for LA 1932 and LA 1984, and then the stadium in Inglewood,
Which the rest of the world calls SoFi.
is going to be the other host for the opening ceremonies. And according to LA 2028, artistic elements of the ceremonies will be at both venues. But if you read the press release pretty carefully, they obviously have not thought that far ahead on execution of this.
Well, we don't have a director.
Right. So, I mean, at least she's got the brief of, okay, 2 stadiums, make it happen. Closing ceremony for the Olympics will be at the Coliseum. The Paralympic opening ceremony will be at the stadium in Inglewood, and the closing ceremony for the Paralympics will be at the Coliseum.
Oh, that's interesting. That's how they're using the 2 stadiums.
Yeah, for the Paralympics. So it's just this opening ceremony for the Olympics, much like Paris only had the Seine for the Olympics. The Paralympics will just have the one stadium for each. I have so many thoughts about this.
The biggest question for me was, didn't we know this already? I was so confused when it was announced because I felt like we had already had this conversation, but I think it's just because it was kicked around as an idea and people just assumed that this was going to happen. Like this was going to be LA 28's big idea after Paris did the Seine. Oh, we'll do 2 stadiums. So when they made the official announcement, I felt just Groundhog Day.
Right, and they did this for the Youth Olympic Games in the last winter one, and I don't think that was a good idea.
Mm. It'll be interesting to see how they play this out because if they're doing artistic elements in both, that could work very well, especially for television, because then you don't have any of that transition time. You've got the
Yes.
next setup ready to go in the next spot. So maybe it'll go more quickly or they can do more intricate things. You can get away from the projection screen floor, which you hate.
Well, because it's old now.
It's done. But if you can have more physical elements because you have time to move them out.
That would be interesting. And if you're sitting in a stadium, you have something to look at besides the screen because that was the one problem I noticed with the Youth Olympic Games opening ceremony. It was like one stadium just watched it on a screen.
And we had that problem both in the opening and closing for Olympics in Paris. When you were on the Seine, 90% of the show was on a screen for you. And then when we both went to closing, once we got to that LA portion, we just sat there watching it on the screen. There was nothing in the stadium. So it makes it very frustrating for the people in the stadium thinking they're, number one, paying a pretty penny for tickets, but I'm seeing it on a screen. I could have stayed home and
Right. And had a
watched my big
better,
TV.
yeah, better experience, probably. So I'm very curious as how this will work. Also, the stadium in Inglewood, the pouring rights are for Pepsi. That's all I could think of.
I know
Remember how we
when we were there were the Pepsi signs everywhere, and we said, "Ooh, something's gonna have to be done about this." But the other thing about SoFi Stadium, and someday I'll get used to saying the stadium in Inglewood, I have a few years, is they have that special giant projection screen in the center. Remember, we saw that when
Yes,
we were there, and it's state of the art, it's huge, it's complex. So how are they going to use that? Has there been a Super Bowl in SoFi yet?
I believe so.
Okay, so we'll have to go back and look at that halftime performance.
Right, because that was the halftime performance where it was all the rappers. It was a really good show.
That was a good show, and they really didn't use that screen for that
No,
show much
no. That we saw.
that we saw. I mean, there could have been things, but it wasn't a central element.
Mhm. But it
I
can
loved
be. So how do you tie this old and new together?
right, because you have the old stadium and the new stadium, and where is the Parade of Nations going to be, and are they gonna split up the athletes?
That's
Which which on the one hand could be good because maybe then the athletes won't have to stand around as long, 'cause it
makes it quicker.
makes it quicker, but on the other hand, it defeats the purpose of having everybody in one place, but it's so big now.
It's very much a juxtaposition of you're bringing the world together, but you want your opening event to be divided. If you split up the Parade of Nations, which we had listeners in the Facebook group were not thrilled about that idea unless you brought Rocket Man into the equation from LA 1984.
I am all for that.
But you do have an element of speeding it up if you switch back and forth between stadiums and you have country, 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 country. I think the one thing that Paris did pretty well was interspersing the Parade of Nations in between artistic elements. I thought that broke everything up really nicely. It still was a very long parade because it was a very long route. That
Well,
that that I think was a bad choice.
I mean, maybe they can do something similar where you've got part of the Parade of Nations in one stadium, artistic elements in the other, then switch
Yeah.
places. So you do that interspersing
Mhm.
quality because you've just like on the Seine, you've got more space to work with.
Right. Right.
More people can see it live.
Mhm.
They can make more money, which, okay, they gotta make their costs back. As long as those people just don't get stuck watching a screen.
Yeah. Yeah. And then where's the cauldron? Are you having 2 cauldrons? And that's the other thing. Or does Rocket Man go back and forth? Um
Oh. Or is the cauldron in a third place entirely, which
Cauldron.
is what they did in Paris, really.
Right.
It was in a totally different spot.
Which can be done, but then everybody's watching it on TV. I don't
Right.
know. And you have a cauldron in the Colosseum. That's the other thing. You
You
have this
do.
cauldron. So what are you going to do?
Do you have Rocket Man come into the stadium in Inglewood with the torch, do the lap, and then take off. How far are they apart? And then carry the torch to the old. I don't know how far apart they are. I don't
It you
remember.
know, it's it's
It's far enough
it's
that he
a
probably can't do that.
but or he gets in his drone taxi, which we're gonna talk about in a second. Or his air taxi. But he could we could have a rocket man bring it, somebody lights it, hands some flame to or they he rockets around the stadium, goes to the other one, so everybody gets to see the flame, but or do you have the cauldron in the Colosseum and a makeshift cauldron and they go at the same time? Or, like you say, third party place, which I don't think was very I don't think that cauldron lighting was very successful because it was very, very long. It was cool. I liked the whole cauldron thing with the torch and the man in the armor or the man in the cloak with the torch, and they're carrying it all through the city, all through the performance. But that last bit where we got to get in the boat and ride the boat, and then you are a long run to the Tuileries,
That
and
was long.
yeah,
That was long. Don't do that.
yeah. So we'll see. Curious to
Maybe
know.
maybe it means there'll be more press seats, so we'll get to both go.
That would be nice. Actress and TV host Maria Menounos, who is the Greek ambassador for LA 2028, will be the master of ceremonies for the flame lighting and handover.
Oh, how clever.
We have a lot of venue news going on. Hollywood Park Studios will become the International Broadcast Center. According to Deadline, this is a mixed use development owned by the LA Rams owner E. Stanley Kroenke, and it will be located in Inglewood by SoFi Stadium. It will have 5 18,000 square foot sound stages and an office building for production and post production. The ground level is going to have a 60 trailer capacity Bay Area. Big, big studio.
Yeah, we were at SoFi Stadium, and I'm kind of wondering, where are they putting this? 'Cause
Far
it's
out
a
because that parking lot was big too.
That's true.
After the games, it's going to transition into a production studio, which word in America is like bring film production back to America and to California, really. But we'll see how that works. Construction aims to start later this month. Other venue news.
Well, there's no way to make anybody happy or everyone happy.
No, very, very true. So, not everyone is happy with the big venue plan that LA released earlier in May, earlier a few weeks ago. And according to the Sports Examiner, LA City Council member Tim McOsker wants sailing moved from Long Beach to San Pedro because that would make it in his district. International Table Tennis President Petra Sorling would like a bigger venue for table tennis because table tennis is currently slated for a 7,000 max capacity spot in the LA Convention Center, but she says the sport is selling out bigger venues than that. And at Paris, its spot at Arena Sud had a 6,500 person capacity venue. But I think because it's going to be geographically closer to countries where table tennis is more popular, it might be more popular for LA. But doesn't everybody want a bigger venue?
Of course, everybody wants to be the center of attention. Everybody wants to be the main character.
You remember what we didn't get in Paris?
When I saw this on our show sheet, I said, did Jill put this on for me? Because I was so excited about the air taxis for Paris. That did not happen. And you said you would absolutely not take an air taxi. And I said, sign me up. I am still in that stance of sign me up.
Wow. I'm still on the fence here because we have an air taxi partner. Archer is going to be the official air taxi provider of the games. According to Brian Bunce of R&D World, there are some obstacles to this actually happening because we're going to start with the technology problems first. The air taxis are supposed to be powered with eVTOL technology, which is electric vertical takeoff and landing. And they are supposed to travel between vertiports at SoFi Stadium. Again, more stuff going in at SoFi. They'll also be at Los Angeles International Airport, the Coliseum, and other hubs throughout the SoCal footprint of the games. They hope that the flights will be 10 to 20 minutes long. They will travel at up to 150 miles per hour. Taxis can carry 4 passengers at a time, and they'll have a range of about 100 miles before recharging. But that's where the issues come in, because right now the batteries for these things are still in prototype stages, and they can only go tens of miles on one charge. So you're talking about needing a lot of charging time, but even if the specs say it takes about 10 minutes to charge them, if you have to charge them more often, you still have taxis out of the sky. It's also going to be a big draw on the power grid during the hottest time of the year. So we'll see how that does. The other issue is that Archer is still not yet certified with the Federal Aviation Administration. This is a multi-stage process. They have passed 3 stages. They're working on the 4th and final one now. Brian Bunce says they will probably need to pass this by 2026 to 2027 to allow enough time to train the pilots and prepare for the games and set all the operational preparations into place. Will it happen? If it does, you need a lot of taxis for a relatively small number of people who will be able to take them. So Bunce did some back of the envelope math and wrote that if they had 100 air taxis in service, they could probably transport up to 16,000 people a day, best case scenario. At Paris, the biggest peak day for attendance was July 30th, 743,000 spectators at Paris that day.
Though, to be fair, the air taxis would make sense to and from the airport or, the longer distance stretches. Like, not everybody is gonna first of all, not everybody goes to more than one venue in a day, so you wouldn't have to move people by air taxi. Paris had only intended to do it from the airport to the center of the city, so maybe they will limit it that way. But I'm telling you, I'm gonna take Ken Hanscom, maybe his wife Ashley, and I will go on an air taxi because I have a feeling Ken would do it with me.
Oh, that's the first thing I thought was Ken Hanscom will be so on this. And because when you say, oh, people won't try to fit in more than one venue, no, people are going to see this service and go, oh, I can go from something in the north side to something down in Long Beach and make it. And I think that would be Ken Hanscom's thought process right there. I can get to even more places than would be possible. So we'll see. We'll see if it happens. We'll see if people take it. Price could be a factor for some people,
Oh, I can't imagine this is gonna be cheap.
but I also think that there are going to be plenty of people who in LA who have the means and get hooked on the Olympics and will go, "Oh, I would like to take an air taxi around."
Or will this be exclusively for Olympic friends and family?
If it is, then the games is eating it, and I'm sure they're not. It's got to be an expensive process.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that. Air taxis, travel of the future. But if air taxi travel is not in the cards for you, LA is beefing up its public transportation system. LA Times reports that it has closed the D line, also known as the Purple Line, for 70 days to continue work on an expansion project under Wilshire Boulevard. This extension has been in the works for a long time. Plan is to open 3 new stations this year. 2 more stations coming in 2026. Final 2 are coming in 2027. That will take the line out to UCLA, where the Village is going to be. So there will be more access in the Olympic area with the Metro line. Speaking of the Village, you will be able to get transportation out there. But one other partnership has been announced, which makes me wonder if we are done with cardboard beds. LA 2028 and Team USA have partnered with Satva, a made in the USA luxury mattress manufacturer, to be their official mattress and restorative sleep partner.
I have a Sattva. It's
Do
very
you
nice.
really? Is it?
I do, and I never thought it was a luxury mattress. It was the one mattress that my husband and I could agree on. It's very lovely. I think the Olympians will sleep nicely.
Very good.
Welcome to TKFLASTAN.
It is the time of the show where we check in with our team, keep the flame alive. These are past guests and listeners of the show who make up our citizenship of our very own country, TKFLASTAN.
Fencer Hadley Hussisian won silver at the Women's FIE Epee Grand Prix in Bogota, Colombia, and Lee Kiefer won silver at the FIE Foil Grand Prix in Shanghai.
Okay, I'm going to call out listener Tommy about fencing.
Oh, no.
because I was looking at he did some medal projections for Paris, and he really put a lot of work into it, and he talked about this on the Facebook group. And I went in to see who he projected. He did not project Lee Kiefer to win fencing. Right?
Tommy. Did he have
Believe
the well, I have to go back now and look at his fencing
Yeah.
predictions.
But
Oh.
he was talking the final analysis he was doing on country counts where he under projected and over projected, and then also he did hit on the number of medals total that France would win, which I think was pretty
That's
good.
impressive.
Yeah, because it's always kind of there's always surprises. So you never really know what's going down, and people have bad days, or there's injuries at the last minute, or people get sick, or somebody just has a great day and surprises you from a place that you never knew was going to happen. But
He
come on,
didn't
Tommy,
believe in Lee.
when you do your projections for Milano, put in the team keep the flame alive factor, because it makes a difference.
And I was at that one too. Tommy, my heart is broken. It is sliced by an epee.
Well, we will have Tommy's website in the show notes for you to check that out too. At the World Athletics Relays in Guangzhou, Kenny Bednarek and Team USA placed second in the 4x100 meter relay, just 5/100ths behind first place South Africa, which where has South Africa been? They're coming out of nowhere, it feels like. So the USA has qualified a team for world champs later this year.
Greco-Roman wrestler Alejandro Sancho won gold in the 72-kilogram weight class at the Pan American Wrestling Championships. His performance contributed to Team USA bringing home the team title as well.
It is good to see Alejandro back. And I didn't even realize how nicely I set this up, because I did not have to say the type of wrestling he did. We all know I can't say it.
I have to dig up that whole quote that we have when we were struggling trying to say Greco-Roman and post that again, because honestly, I'm not sure if we put it in the show. I know I've published it before, but it honestly is one of the funniest moments we have ever had.
At the diamond discipline meet in Doha, pole vaulter Katie Moon tied for silver. Then she went to Morocco and won gold in Rabat.
Para-javelin thrower Justin Fongsavan took gold at the Jalisco, I'll go with that pronunciation, 2025 Grand Prix.
Hammer thrower Deanna Price won second at the USATF Throws Festival in Tucson.
And this spring, badminton player Beiying Zhang competed at the Yonex All England Open Badminton Championships 2025, where she lost in the round of 16, and the Yonex Swiss Open 2025, where she lost in the round of 32.
I'm not saying never for Jackie. Artistic swimmer Jacqueline Simoneau did commentary at the recent Artistic Swimming World Cup in Ontario.
Race walker Evan Dunphy was named to his 7th Canadian World Athletics World Championship team to compete in the 35-kilometer race walk in Tokyo in September, but he's currently off to Madrid for another competition.
Kudos to sports communicator and ski history expert Tom Kelly for receiving the U.S. ski and snowboard team's Julius Blagan Award, its highest honor.
Congratulations to Liana Mutia, who was elected to the USA Judo's Board of Directors in the Paralympic Athlete Director role.
And Nordic combined skier Annika Malasinski was profiled in the Colorado Sun about advocating for the inclusion of women's Nordic combined in the Olympics.
Take a breath. There's been a lot going on.
I know, and it's so exciting to see so many people compete again. It's nice to be like, oh, we haven't heard about Alex Sancho for a long time. And when I saw Justin Fongsavan competing, that made me happy.
And Deanna Price.
Right. Does Justin have an enemy yet? That's...
Oh, God, do I adore Justin.
So, yeah, good job, team. Keep the flame alive. Getting things going for the start of summer. And we want to hear what you're doing for the start of summer, too. Also, let us know if it helps you to hear from others about how they manage mental illness.
You can chat with us and other listeners on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. Email us at flamealivepod@gmail.com. The voicemail and text line is always open at 208-352-6348. That's 208 Flame It. And get even more Olympics and Paralympics from our weekly newsletter. You can sign up for that at flamealivepod.com. We'll have links to that and a whole bunch of other stuff in the show notes.
Oh, next week is going to be fun because remember how LA 2028 was going to have more female athletes than male athletes?
Were they really? Were they really?
Well, that meant we needed to ping our TKFLASTAN gender and sports expert, Dr. Michelle Donnelly, to get her opinion. And she has thoughts about that. And the interesting thing is they may surprise you. So be on the lookout for that next week. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, keep the flame alive.